happy Black Friday. Did you go shopping? Did you stay in and hide? Hi, Vacandace. Hi, Ice Dragon. Hi, Jack. Hi, Chocobo. Hi, Foxy. Hi, Trallion. Thank you for lurking. You're wonderful.
Hello, everyone. So good to see you.
Ah, Book, thank you. Yeah, you've been here for 6 months. It's been 6 months since the 24-hour Day of Doom. Oh, hang on. Let me see.
Yeah, it's sensitive to my mouth, so sometimes I'll just be like opening my mouth or taking a drink of water, and Ghoul's like, "Yep, you're speaking."
Okay, you can hear him. All right. A VTube Studio do be like that, like you want to take a drink or eat a snack or something and everyone gets to watch you do it. It's fun in like the clips videos. Oh, naughty Ghoul already. When I get them back and like I see my mouth just open and close and I'm like, and that's when I had some water. Oh, I don't know if I moved your head, Pat. Hang on. Okay, I had to shrink you a little bit. There we go. There we go. Okay, we're good.
Wow. Yes.
Rye's really been loving the little Ghoul VTuber that we got him, and I'm like, do you want a real one? And he's like, I keep thinking about it. I don't know.
I am just very much of the... I'm a very pragmatic person, so if I'm not going to use it on a regular basis, I don't want it. So I'm being very good. I'm being very cautious.
I mean, that's fair. Because they're expensive, and we did talk about there's like, so he's got like his customizable DB one that we found for inexpensive, but there's like a better customizable dude that's like $100. So I'm like, if you feel like it, next month we can try that first. I don't know how the slime was rigged. We found the slime on Etsy, and I'm like, that's perfect. Like, it even comes with purple. It's a little Ghoul slime.
Yeah, he's pretty great. I love him.
I love that he's got all his little expressions and the tentacles and everything. Yeah, he just likes emoting sometimes, so like he won't even be talking, he'll just be making faces in the camera to see what he can do. We'll see if
it's a lot of fun.
I'm gonna say if Professor stops by. So you can say hello to his son. Yes! Thank you so much, Carmine! Thank you, thank you, thank you! Oh my gosh, a whole year. We've had this stream now for a whole year.
Yes. Crazy how time flies.
It's been 7 months and 11 days since the 24-hour doomsday.
7 months since we did that? Jesus Christ.
Just picturing what you tie the interactions to. Give him articulated tentacles. I just look over and you're tentacling someone. Yeah, bad! Bad! Oh, Carmine, thank you! Thank you, thank you, thank you! Everybody gets a sub. You get a sub. You get a sub. Question is, are you recovered yet from the 24-hour stream? I don't think so. I don't think I ever truly recovered, honestly.
Weirdly enough, 2 or 3 days after the 24-hour stream, I hadn't felt that good in a long time, and I think it's just because I ended up sleeping like 16, 18 hours.
Head pats for Ghoul. There you go. That's so cute, and you bounce like that. Oh my god. Oh dear, you're so cute.
Problem?
No, it's fine. Just so cuddleable.
You would know.
You reset your body clock with it. Sometimes very useful. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I did not feel good at all for like a week. Oh, we're at a hype train. Thank you guys. Yay! Thank you for the hydrate. So for this workshop, we took your guys' feedback when we were first building it, as to like what everyone wanted to listen to us talk about. So it's a very generalized overview of things. As with all of our workshops, if you have any questions, it's always just open, chill, anything at all. We're happy to answer. If you need clarification on things, if you want me to pause on a slide or go back to something, just say it and we will do it.
Yeah, we're not restricted by a time limit, so just feel free to jump in and ask questions, do whatever. Aw, thank you for the cheer, Jack.
Yes. Oh my god. Okay, thank you for the cheer, Jack. Thank you for the 5 gift subs, Anonymous. Oh my god. Thank you. Thank you.
Someone being super secret. Thank you. Thank you to whoever that was. You are incredible.
It's like Secret Santa for stream. Yay.
Hooray. This gives me joy.
That was awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you. You're the best. Level 3 hype train. Let's go. Alright, so we're at 611. Hello, 2P. Pac-Man Ghost. So I think we're good to start the PowerPoint. And we'll go through it slowly. And again, if you have any questions, just let us know. It says panel because we usually do these at cons, so please forgive the panel.
It's still a panel. We just have the luxury of more time in our own homes.
That's true, yeah, we don't have to like get out. I always feel so bad when the next guy comes in and is like sitting in the chair staring at us like, get off the chairs, get off the chair.
Look, we get the entire hour, all right? Just because he came in 15 minutes early does not mean that he's entitled to our chair.
We're gonna use the whole damn hour.
That's what we were allotted, and that's what we will use.
So for those of you who don't know, I am Lynx or Cat, and this is Cool Rye or other half of Double Blind.
Hello.
We write Everyone's a Cat Girl Together, which is our main staple series, and then I write Of Trails and Snails and The Chronicles of Phelan Sahira. And what do you write? Cool.
I write Dynamis, which is a mecha, and I also write Necromancer. Working title.
We've both been writing, so I started writing full-time in 2019, and Rye started shortly after in like 2021, which is when Cat Girls started. So we have been through 2 million words, I think, since then, and we are doing our best to put out free information for other indie authors or anyone who's looking to get into writing. Not even publishing, you don't have to, like just if you want to better your craft, that is our goal. The QR code is partially obscured. If I duck a little bit, the QR code goes straight to our link tree, and I kept it up there from the UwuCon. So if you're looking for our link tree, I don't know if I put it in. Was I a smart person?
Could you not just edit the panel to reverse it, like to the opposite side? Put it over to the left.
It'll probably. You know what? I could quit and do it, but like if you really, really want our link tree, I will grab you our link tree again.
One moment, please. Your call is very important to us.
Alright, I will also pin this. That is the QR code. Cool. So if you're wondering where it goes. Oh! Also, it's Black Friday, and our Merchants of Nearlia shop is having a Black Friday sale, including some of the pins from our Patreon, which have never been in the shop before. letters from characters are on sale. The postcards are on sale. Keychains, other enamel pins, all kinds of good stuff. So there's my Black Friday shout out. Back to the workshop. All right. I want to write. Where do I start? We're going to start through talk shop. It's like I said a little bit ago, we're going to go over a lot of stuff, just broad strokes and not get into the nitty gritty of too many things. So
this is just a general overview of things.
If you have questions, if you need clarification, just type it. We will pause and go over it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is sitting down. I want to write a book. Like, let me write a story. How do I write a story? So the very first thing that you need to do is build a writing habit. So you should find a time that's good for you. Like any time of the day. That could be when you first wake up, on your lunch break, when you get off of work, before you go to bed, write a few sentences, but put 15 minutes a day into writing and stick to that.
I will second that. If you guys listened to me last time, I said I find that I actually do my best writing in the morning now. So I like to write as soon as I get up if I can do it. Whatever works for you.
Which is a bummer for him because the birds do well if we let them out for a couple hours in the morning and Molly comes in here and screams.
Yep, so I don't get any of my good writing done anymore. After a week or two of 15 minutes, increase it to 30 and so on until you can write each day for an hour or two. You don't have to go exactly to this. If you end up doing 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever suits you, it will work just fine. The important part is building a habit in the first place, because what will end up happening is if you do 15 minutes a day, you're going to eventually hit a point where you're like, no, I'm still feeling good. I can keep going. And you may actually find yourself doing 20, 30, 40 minutes. But the important part is just try and increase it as time goes on.
And during these times that you're setting aside, do not worry about how many words you get down. Even if you deleted words from last night, try not to do that. Try to just keep writing forward. Editing comes later. But if you sat down and in that 15 minutes, you got 5 words, 10 words, that's fine. Like, that's more words on the page. The really important part is just to keep your fingers moving, which goes into the next one. So do not worry that it's like, these are not good words. These aren't my best words. This really sucks. Like, don't. Just keep writing forward, keep getting new ideas down, and eventually you will go back and reread and then you can edit. But this part is just very, very important to get a writing habit going. You're next.
Focus sprints are some of our favorite ways to get us writing. Again, you do what works for you. If you need music, if you need something going on in the background, that's great. Focus sprints, what we mean by those though, is you put everything away. You don't open up any tabs, you keep your phone out of reach. Anything that can serve as a distraction, don't look at it, don't pay any attention to it. And you'll be surprised at how many words you can get down when you remain focused.
If you're not sure what to write during your 5, 10, 15 minutes, we really like writing and journal prompts. There's a gorillion out there online. There are actually a couple of books of just like 500 writing prompts, and they give you a few lines to respond. Those are good starters. Like if you're not working on a main story, you just want to start building a writing habit. Doing prompts is a lot of fun. I know for a long time, like Ryan and I have little journals that we would find a prompt, and I had like a little sand, why do I want to call it a sand timer? An hourglass.
A sand timer, huh?
Fuck! Anyway, had an hourglass, and we would just flip it and then write the prompts for however long that went, and then we were done. And it really helped getting my thoughts into place and like kind of sorting out my brain and just weeding out everything else that you're thinking about. Because that can be hard too, is when you sit down, you're right, you're thinking like, oh, I should be making food or cleaning or doing something else. But like, you've really got to dedicate that time to specifically writing if you want to build that habit. Anything else to say, my dear Ghoul?
No, I think you have adequately addressed every issue.
Very good. Are we good on writing habits? Would you like us to answer questions, or everyone good? We can continue.
To kind of give you the TLDR version of building a writing habit, it's just about building a habit. So repeated and consistent methods, whatever works for you is great. Oh! Yay! Thank you so much. Thank you, Chocobo. Oh, that is so sweet. Anya will soon have a new cage.
Thank you.
Thank you. But yeah, just building a habit. You know, whatever works for you. Set aside a certain amount of time. Make sure you remain focused. A big part of building a habit is understanding your own vices, your own distractions. So be very honest with yourself. Ask yourself, oh, am I being lazy about this? Am I letting something distracting me? Am I trying to get away from this? Be very honest with yourself and try to take those distractions out of play.
Yeah, kind of to answer the Candace's question, what do you do when something repeatedly disrupts your habits? If it's something you can control, then try and take it out. If it's something that's happening at the same time of day, time to move your writing habit to a different time of day. How do you reset yourself? It can be really hard, like, once you're distracted. Like, for example, I get so painfully distracted by Discord because all of you are just too fucking entertaining, and I enjoy talking to everyone and responding to, like, every message that comes up. So I have to close out of Discord sometimes. Like, even if I have a sprint going, I'll kind of click around, and it's like, nope, now I'm falling into the rabbit hole. I must stop. I can't stop. So you, like Ryan was just saying, you've got to be honest with yourself as to what is disrupting it to see if it's something that you can change and take it out of the equation, or if it's like, for example, we have a guy in our neighborhood that at 4 a.m. every morning, he revs up his giant fucking truck for like 20 minutes, and it makes me so mad, and I have no idea where he is, but it happens every day. So if something like that is happening at 3 o'clock when you're trying to do your writing time and it gets you every day, try to like move your writing time up to 4 and kind of work around it.
And I'll use myself as an example just to kind of answer Candace's question again. If it's within your control, obviously, just remove it. Whether it's your phone, the internet, what have you, anything that's distracting you. If you're capable of removing it, remove it. I myself have noticed that I tend to sometimes dread it instead of falling into it like it's my passion. So sometimes I'll be sitting there like looking for something to entertain me and escape it. So I'll sometimes run to the Discord, or I'll pull up Steam, and I have no intention of playing any certain game, and I have to catch myself on that and be like, no, you're just making excuses, go back to it. So little things like that. So what I'll usually do to reset myself is I'll take a little bit of a walk around my house or around the block. I'll come back, I might listen to a song to get me into the mood, and then I fall back into the writing. And Chocobo asks, is the goal strictly volume, or is that simply a start habit? It's simply a start habit. The volume isn't really important. The important part is just making sure that you keep doing it. If you write 50 words, but those were 50 words that you were concentrating on, that's fine. The volume's not important. Let's see. Do you plan what you want to write in advance or just ad hoc? Depends on how I'm feeling that day, and I'll let her answer that question as well. But most of the time, it's determined. Usually I have a schedule, obviously just because this is our full-time job. So there's usually a schedule that I am following. But if it's something that I'm feeling passionate about, usually it's a little more spur of the moment.
For work, I like to schedule mine out and try and stick to it as closely as I can, like most of the time I can. And then there's times like this month where I've got to switch around when stuff gets written. But I work better on a schedule. It can be different per person though. Like it maybe you work better if you just get to choose that day, whatever you're working on. So don't be too strict or like hard on yourself if make a schedule and you just like you feel very overwhelmed by it, or you try and go to it and feel very indecisive on what you want to write, and it would work better if you're trying to make a schedule. So you can try both, see what works better for you, and totally agree that this is just to write a habit, so it's not about volume at all. It's more about making sure that you carve out that time just to focus on it. And this works for everything, like not just writing. If you want to get better at art, sit down for 15 minutes to sketch, or painting, sit down for 15 minutes to paint. It's just building that habit and getting yourself used to like getting into that mindset.
I agree.
And this will kind of help too when talking about do we plan, like what we plan we're going to write, even if you're sitting there like, okay, I need to write a Sahira chapter today, or a Cat Girls chapter today, or a Necromancer chapter today. Here's outliners versus discovery writers.
The outliners outline, as the word implies. They prefer to have the plot set in stone before writing. If this works for you, great. I know it does not work for me and her, simply because there will be often times, and you're going to run into this regardless of what type of writer you are, you're going to plot something out or write something, and when you get to a future plot point, you're like, oh no, the thing that I had planned doesn't work anymore. I know plenty of outliners who swear by outlining, and I know plenty of discovery writers who swear outlining is the death of writing. At the end of the day, though, it's whatever you prefer, whatever makes you feel more comfortable.
There's no black and white, right or wrong way to do this. So whatever we talk about and we'll say like, this is what we do, that's not the definitive version of writing forever. It's just how we work and what works better for us. So the opposite of outliners is discovery writers, or you may have heard like planners versus pansters or chaos writers. But discovery writers is what we do, and we prefer to discover the world, the characters, the plot, feel things out, let them grow, let them talk to us, and like eventually kind of find out where things are going to go. It's also possible to have a hybrid. So you can do a little bit of outlining and then also be a discovery writer. Hello, Monkey. Thank you so much for coming in. So one thing that we kind of like to do for any of the stories that we're working on is write a few ideas of what we want this chapter and maybe the next chapter to accomplish.
I've actually been liking this one quite a bit, and I think that's just because of the sheer number of outlines that I've received from clients as the years went on. So I've learned to adapt to outlining to some extent. When I was writing Necromancer, I think this was a couple days ago. You guys, those of you who were with me might have recalled that I said that I had the next 3 or 4 chapters planned, and I did. And I wrote 2 or 3 of them on stream. I had one for Ristel, who's the main character. I had one for Kaz, who is a priest of the faith, and then I had another one for a newer character that was showing up. But I still let them guide me, if that makes sense. I lightly outline, oh, this is what happens in the chapter. It might even be just 1 or 2 sentences, like the character discovers such and such, it changes them. And then I just let myself go with it.
Candace asked, do you have story goals, i.e. major plot points you plan and the discovery way toward them? Yes, absolutely, 100%. For example, we have known how Cat Girls is going to end since we started the story, but we don't know when we're going to get there. Like, we have ideas for the events that like lead up to it that we'll eventually touch on. But again, it's been very, like, we're already at volume 7 and we're like, we'll get there when we get there. For volume 6, when we got to the last I'd say 10 to 15 chapters, we actually went in and decided like each chapter, like here's what we're gonna hit, like bam, 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 bam. But we couldn't really sit down and talk about that until we got everyone in the position that they needed to be in. And sometimes that can take a lot more chapters and a lot more words than you're expecting. So it's like, oh yeah, I could totally do this in like 3 chapters. And then one of those chapters is just a fucking dinner because the dialogue went on so long that it's like, oh, okay, I guess this is where it's stopping now.
Let's see. What do you do when you find you need to do a major revamp on design that impacts your planning, especially when you can no longer retcon? That's actually a really good question, Candace. And it depends on the severity of the plot point. Full disclosure, when her and I were starting Cat Girls, we did not expect it to turn into what it did. So, and the writing will reflect that. If those of you who have been around since the series first began, you may remember how silly some parts were in the beginning. It wasn't until about after 30, 40 chapters that her and I sat down and we were like, you know what, actually, this has some potential to it. This could actually be really interesting. This would really suck. So we started taking the writing a little bit more seriously, started addressing other pain points in the story, and then we went back and edited the first 30, 40 chapters to better reflect the tonal shift. Now, there were a couple of things that we did kind of set in stone to begin with. Like, for example, it's only very light spoilers, but the Minotaur fight towards the beginning of the book, we had decided, oh, when monsters are defeated, they disappear after a certain amount of time. They vanish, kind of like in a video game. The mob vanishes. We axed that. We wanted to take everything a lot more seriously. And so we had to pretty much revamp the entire first 30 or 40 chapters to reflect that. And to answer your question about retconning, unless it is a book that you have published and is out there and is receiving tens and thousands of ratings and you're getting universally praised or lambasted, you can always retcon it. There's almost never a point of no return. I can't think of an example right off the top of my head, but there's rarely anything that you can't go back and fix.
Yeah, everything he said I 100% agree with. There's definitely times where there's things that you're like, oh shit, I need to fix this. But to also, just in case you meant like we planned an outline and then we get there and it's different. That's really the heart of discovery writing, is understanding that you made that outline, but it might not stick. Like it might not be the same outline, and that happens all of the time. So one of the reasons that we do say that we're discovery writers is because I've seen it where people are outlining and then as they're writing, the story is not going the way they want it to, and it makes them so upset they freeze and stop writing it, which is really sad. Like a lot of times from what I've found is if I have something in the outline and it's going a completely different way, that's just because the characters have grown or moved in different ways than I expected, and I'm going to change the outline according to that. The problem with forcing your characters to be in the outline is the Game of Thrones season 8 problem, where you had all of these characters with really cool character development, and then we got to season 8 and they were like, no, this doesn't fit the outline anymore. So they shifted entirely and they became like the same people they were at the beginning of season 1. And it was so frustrating. And at the same time, I'm very glad to have like an excellent example of what it looks like when you stick your characters to like a hardcore outline. Also, hello MSM. Double Blind is 2 people. It's my husband, who is currently the tiny slime, and myself. We both write Everyone's a Cat Girl together, and then we write our own stories on our own for commissions, for publishing, and then we sometimes do workshops together, which is what we're doing tonight.
And real quick, Carmine, I cannot answer that question. I cannot answer how it would have ended. just for reasons. Yeah, Twitch is really bad for not counting lurkers, so I appreciate you, Sneaky.
Made a little 1-point redeem that just is like lurking. That, yeah, the one that says just lurking and it's Raven. Like, we won't react to it. It just makes it so Twitch counts you as a viewer. So thank you very much for doing that. That way you don't have to type. You can just redeem it if you don't want to. But yeah, so Shiki mentioned the relationship system and the set bonus. So we had an affection system where...
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll explain this a little bit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, since I designed all the systems. So there was an affinity system, which basically was going to track how close Matt was to each girl. It was meant to represent kind of like how dating sims will let you track your progress, essentially. Like, oh, you know, if you give a certain gift to each girl, it improves their affinity towards you, kind of like the dating sims. And again, this is when we were being really, really silly with it, and we weren't expecting to take it very far. We had the affinity system, we had the monsters that disappeared, there were set bonuses, there was all kinds of stuff that we were playing around with. We were just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. And you'll find that a very good chunk of the systems that originally showed up in the story got axed completely because they had no plot relevance. Once we started taking the story a little bit more seriously, the affinity system made no sense whatsoever. None at all. First of all, how does the iPod know this, and how is it keeping track of that? And second of all, if the men have a duty to propagate their islands, their culture is going to reflect that. Most of the cat girls aren't going to think anything of it because they think, oh, well, this is just the man's duty. This is what he's expected to do. So they're going to propagate with the man regardless of what the affinity looks like. And even if the affinity got higher, what does that represent? Does that represent how many gifts you're going to get from her? How much more experience she gets in a fight? It's vague. It's extremely vague. So we axed those systems. And I think the plot is honestly a lot stronger for it.
100% agree. We axed knowledge too. Like, knowledge is a thing that you would level up over time.
Oh my god, I forgot about knowledge. No, talk about something that came back to bite me in the ass real bad. I thought knowledge would be a really cool concept because I don't like the idea of intelligence as a stat, because that wouldn't make sense. You know, you come into a world and it's like, oh, does everybody just start at 1 intelligence? Does that mean everybody has a certain average intelligence? I don't like it as a stat. I've never liked it as a stat. It implies that fighters can't be smart. It implies barbarians can't be smart. Bards can't be smart, stuff like that. It's stupid. So I went with knowledge. It's like, oh, well, if they know something, it can be rated. It has degrees of rates, depending on how far you can take it in the world. So I thought, okay, that'll be really cool. A knowledge in alchemy, a knowledge in blacksmithing, a knowledge in this. And then it got out of control very quickly. And there were a lot of times where I would get involved in the story, her included, and we would realize, oh no, we forgot to talk about knowledge. Shouldn't Matt's knowledge be going up every time he's told something he did not know? So, yeah, that got way too technical, way too quickly.
We learned a lot about gaming things that don't transfer well into a novel setting and don't make a lot of sense in like a novel story setting. Like you said, affinity and knowledge. Another one that made me laugh is like if they change class and they were an archer for like 10 years and they changed to a fighter, does it mean they don't know how to do archery anymore? Like suddenly all of that knowledge they've gained and learned is just toast and they can't equip a bow? That seems stupid.
Exactly. And what's really funny too is that if you look at the first 3 girls Matt encounters, their names actually reflect the old system. Kiki was supposed to be short for cake, so the cake was going to be her favorite item for the affinity system. Cannoli, self-explanatory. And then Raven, she was named that way as to hint, oh, she likes birds. And that's what we went with. So there's your little bit of history as to how we came up with the names.
Drawback of Lit RPG, too many numbers. We don't, like, Rye really enjoys crunching the numbers and crunching the systems, and I think that's really cool. I hate it. I just like going in our world doc and looking at the cool skills and pulling what I need to and trying to be creative with them. But on my own, like, even with Sahiro's magic system, I run everything by him because he's just so good at it and can catch things that are going to break the world in time. Like, he's so good at seeing, oh, this is going to totally screw your whole world.
I am happy to assist. But yeah, we got a little bit off of our tangent. I'm ready to continue if you are.
Yes. Oh, there were questions though, so it's fine. Hello, Inner Dragon, and you're welcome. The cover is awesome. You did great. All right, next. There's no correct way to write, which we said, only the way that works for you. So again, you could mix these, mix and match, try different ones, see what happens. Like, be open to change. That is so important as a creator, just in any field whatsoever. Like, be willing to try something different. If something is not working, then change to something else. If you're getting stuck in discovery writing, start outlining and see if that helps you. If outlines make you feel miserable, try to discovery write, etc.
Yep, I agree. Here is your basic story graph. So most stories, there's alternative versions to this, and I'm not saying that this is the one way you need to write a story, but if you're newer to writing, or if you want to understand why certain stories have the effects that they do, this is a great place to start, because this is basically the hero's journey, essentially, and it also represents how you hook people in, you keep them interested, you have a climax and a falling action, and then the story resolves itself.
Everyone who's seen this graph from the 3rd grade on to the 12th grade, maybe in college, this is not a new graph. This has been around and beaten into our heads. But the thing is, it works. And when you're just starting out, this works great. And if you're like stuck on what to do with a chapter, this is also good. We'll talk about chapters a little bit later, but this is a really nice just basis for basing your story on. There's other ones called like Save the Cat, which have like 9 peaks and valleys to it. But when you're just starting out, make sure that your story has exposition, conflict, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Like, this is the very, very generalized story. I want to keep saying graph, but like the flow that works every single time, guaranteed.
Template.
Yes. Template's a great word.
Yeah, so, and again, there's a reason why this method is very popular. Storytellers have been using this for thousands of years. So you really can't go wrong with this if you're just trying to learn and understand why something is effective.
Do you have to follow this outline fully, or is there a path that you can follow? No, it doesn't have to be specific. Thank you so much, Book. Thank you. Let me show you the Save the Cat real quick. And I'll answer your volumes question in a second too. All right. So this is Save the Cat over here. Oh, and it apparently blocked out Dry for a second for some reason. But opening image, theme stated, catalyst, break into Act 2, midpoint, all is lost, break into Act 3. So this is like when you get really deep into storytelling and understand what these different things mean on the beat sheet, and you can read more into it. Schrodinger's story model. Not quite. Okay, good. Brian's back. Not equal censor block. No tentacles for you. So volumes still need to follow this. We were struggling with that with Cat Girls because we didn't start putting our books into paperback until we were on like volume 3 or 4. And then when we sat down, we had to go through each of them and go, okay, when is the climax? What is the resolution? What is the climax? What is the resolution? So we're at 5 volumes, and then we figured out 6 was like the first volume that we were like, perfect. This is the climax. This is the resolution. This is when the book ends. So sometimes like you have to go back and really decide what is going to be the climax for that volume, and it's not always perfect.
Yeah, if you're doing a web serial or a web novel, this may prove difficult for you if you decide to bring it to paperback at some point. Just because, you know, especially if you're a discovery writer, you might end up at a certain point where you're like, well, crap, I don't I don't know where the climax is. I don't know where the falling action is. I don't know where to stop it. So you could spend some time on this point.
Yeah, Everyone's a Cat Girl is still like a web serial right now, so we still post chapters weekly. But it was really tough for us, especially with volumes 4 and 5. We knew we had to split them up, otherwise it was going to be like a 400,000 word volume, and all of our books have been like 120 to 130k. So it was just way too freaking much to put into 2 books. So like we had to sit down and decide when is going to be the climax for this, and for at least 2 of them, I've had to go back and write like a resolution chapter that felt like it was resolving that book and then going to lead into the next one. I know one's like the climactic moment doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't feel as like epic as a bunch of the other ones, but that was because again we were writing it for web, so it was kind of like we had to decide where it was and just kind of resolve it and then move on. But yeah, there needs to be the ebb and the flow to the action, but even between action there's always that one major climax, like this one giant conflict that your character gets resolved, or if it's going into the next book, at least resolve a little tiny bit of it and then keep going. Like 4 and 5 for us, for volumes 4 and 5, the giant problem gets resolved in 5, but we have like a smaller part of that get resolved in 4. We will keep going on. World building!
Okay, so world building is a very real hell. Be very careful not to get stuck in it. Deciding general rules of the land is where we usually suggest people start. Start with something super simple. Don't get too caught up in all the nitty-gritty details like religions and cultures and where these people come from and all of that. What I like to do is take my main character, or just take a character, and just write them in a day of the life. You know, it can be like 1,000 words, 2,000 words, whatever you're comfortable with, and just see how that goes. So that's where I usually like to start, because that'll get me a general idea of like what kind of feeling I'm going for, what kind of theme I'm going for.
We did a whole world building workshop too. It's up on YouTube, the VOD is. So this is going to be a very basic overview, but we talked for like 2 or 3 hours on world building. Obviously, again, if you have questions, we're happy to answer them now. This is super laid back and we'll talk about whatever. But that's why like world building right now is reduced to 1 slide at this point for that reason. Continuing on, consider things like population, technology versus magic and religion. So in the grand overview, when you're building your world, it's good to have just, I guess, like, say soft points, but they don't have to be super detailed. So is there a religious sect? Is there a god? Are there multiple gods? How do people react to that? If you have a magic system, is there also technology? Why? Like, how does that interact with one another? Your population is really going to decide a lot. Like, that'll decide how many jobs you have, who's doing what, and it'll help put your character in a mindset just straight out of the gate.
To kind of add to that, what I like to do is I like to let my characters say things that might be specific to a religion or a way of life, and I may come back to that later. So I think that's what she means by like soft insertion. Just insert little soft bits of points, like maybe one character is performing a very light spell and you don't know how it works yet, but you just want to include magic somewhere. Demonstrate the level of technology, like do they have an industry, are they still stuck in more like dark ages, and then of course religion is also going to play a major part in how those two things develop. So one person may not like it, the other person is totally for it, and you could add just something super light, and you may go back to it later and change it, or you may even remove it. But you could say, like we have a phrase called Sorceress Tits, and it's kind of a slur, it's kind of a curse that people who it's used by people of the faith to basically say, "Oh my god," or "I can't believe you did that," in so many words.
I was totally looking for high level overview, but soft insertion is hilarious.
Yeah, I realized what I had just said as soon as it came out of my mouth. I'm like, oh.
Fine, you're the right character for it. How do you decide what elements are worth developing? Like tentacles. The things that I develop first and foremost are whatever is going to be very important to that world. So let's talk Sahira for a second. In the first chapter of Sahira, I needed to decide what kind of kids were going to this school, what kind of peers Sahira was going to have, where she was coming from, and then what the sanctum looks like. So in that chapter, I created 2 or 3 races of people, like vampires, humans, and elves, and then I had them start talking about their families, so I start name dropping and realize they're going to be noble, so now I need some nobility families. I describe the school, and then she goes to her first class, which is demonology, so then I'm starting to add in the types of demons. How many are there? Like, how do they interact with one another? How do they interact with humans? So religion has not come up very much in her story yet, and that's something that I am still developing as I go and feeling it out. But figuring out the magic has been first and foremost. Figuring out the world has been second, like as far as what different races do I have, where are they, a really like brief world map so I can just visualize. Like, I draw a lot of stuff in MS Paint to kind of see what I'm doing, but I'm still building onto it in every single chapter. I'm learning.
I know you have world building documents. How much do you share versus how much do you keep reserved just for you? Pretty much all of it is reserved just for us. Pretty much all of it. If I showed off the world document to Cat Girls, everybody would be very, very, very well acquainted with how the system works and several of the plot points in our story. Thus, we keep it to ourselves.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the story. So Cat Girls, it's very, very hidden because of how much back-end work goes into the skills and the systems. Also, hello, Death's Head. So we really can't share that. It's got to be behind some smoke and mirrors, or else it won't function. Sahira's world doc, you so far have seen every single part of it because I fill it as I go. And then Snail Girls is kind of the same way, except it has a lot of snail facts that I just hold on to for potential future stuff. So, like, it depends on the story and it depends on the doc. But I know Cat Girls, right, clutches like pearls. Soft insertion of the hard plane at her altar. Oh my god, Carmine, no! Can we get feedback on prose I did for the fic? Unfortunately, we have 0 time for unpaid feedback editing work. We just do commissions and then our own web serials. So, sorry about that. You are free to post it up in Discord and give feedback to other writers. It's like a feedback loop, and see if anyone can give you feedback there. But yeah, we are totally packed on work.
Yep, completely unavailable.
What was sorry.
Oh, you got it.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
What was the hardest information you had to put in a story? So this might be different for Ryan and I, so I'll start. I think so far, God, the alchemy in Sahira, the alchemy chapter took me like 2 days to go through and research a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of different chemicals, a bunch of different plants, how they work with each other, how things are created, how to cut up certain like vegetables so that I could copy that and translate that over. Religion is probably another one, but yeah, go ahead, Ray.
So I can think of 2 bits that were really, really tough for me. One, any chapter with Emberlyn in it. I had to do so much research and really tackle San Island from every direction that I could think of. And those chapters, I spent at least a week just researching the material and making sure that I had everything all prepped for their conversations. And even then, I still missed some things because, as I'm sure lots of you are aware, her and I edit each other's chapters. So she'll write a chapter, I'll edit it, I'll ask questions, I'll tune it up, and vice versa. And still I miss some things. The next most comparable thing I could think of, though, was the religion in the Necromancer story that I am writing, because it is a huge part of why the world is the way it is. And it's implied very early on that the type of substance in the air that allows people to use their magic was not a good thing. And the religion reflects that. So I've had to constantly make sure that everybody acknowledges that fact.
I had a tough time writing Kritik too, because I was researching Tamil and India and religion and the kalam that he was doing, which has like 4 different names and a bunch of different meanings. And I researched the song he was singing. So like every single aspect, pretty much every sentence of that chapter was a piece of research that I had to put in and make sure that it was legitimate, because I didn't want to like offend anyone with my inability to look stuff up. And Janusz was another one, because I'm not very familiar with Poland, and so like trying to figure out what time he came from, what it would have looked like around then, which is like what he's carrying with him as far as personality wise, his memories, what he's gone through. So writing from another country when I've never been there is super tough, because I want it to sound legitimate and I want it to sound correct. So that can be really tough.
For books you have finished, how far did you still need to build the world? So I'll let her answer this as well. For me personally, for books that we have finished, that would just be
I don't understand.
Rules. You don't understand?
Uh-uh.
So let me make sure I understand the question perfectly clear, since she's not sure of book. Do you mean, like, did we outline the world? Like, did we build the world in advance before we started writing, or were there certain aspects that we tackled before we started writing? I'll move on to the Candace while you're answering. Since we're talking about world building, how do you decide when you're too far down the world building rabbit hole and not focused enough on writing the actual story? For me, it's getting the general concepts of things down. Like, for example, if I sit there and I decide, okay, I absolutely cannot write anything until I understand a little bit about the culture, the religion, and the magic. Okay, fine. Get the general purpose, get the general concept down for how the magic works. Make sure you understand exactly how it works first. And then just get some general concepts down about the religion. I'll take Necromancer, for example, because it's very religion heavy. Oh, thank you so much, Star. That's so sweet of you. Thank you. For Necromancer right now, I knew that the reason the magic exists to begin with was because of some kind of conflict. And the conflict was resolved because of four people. And they're referred to as the 4 saints. So because they were integral on ending the conflict, a religion was built around them. So I can constantly refer to the 4 saints, and everybody knows who you're talking about. But that's basically all I got down. I didn't get anything down. I don't have their appearances. I don't have their fighting styles. I don't have their preferred food. I don't get into the nitty-gritty details. I would say as long as you have the general idea of how things work and you have some of the characters acknowledged, some of the concepts acknowledged, you can start writing pretty much immediately. But once you start getting into really deep details, like the history of these continents, how they were formed, where the planet came from, why, no, you're getting way too far at that point.
Okay, so book, for the ones we have on Amazon, do you mean like the ones we finished, how far did we still feel like we needed to build the world? Like we weren't done? I'm just trying to understand so I can answer you correctly. And then also for the rabbit hole world building, if all you've been doing is outlining for like a whole week and you haven't written anything on the story, it's time to stop and sit down and like write the actual story. You can start a story with one simple angry idea. You don't have to like world build a whole bunch to get into it. You can just discover it and add later. not equal, by the way. Your first draft is never, ever, ever going to be your last draft, and it shouldn't be your final draft. So as you go, you can make changes and you can go back and retcon things like we were talking about. You can add things. You can create sayings like Sorceress Tits and go back and start adding that in there once you figure out like how people curse or how people are referring or like what they think of. So try not to get stuck on just coming up with ideas in your world instead of just sitting down and playing in it for a while.
What do you believe the best way of conveying world building is in your writing? Can you rephrase that, Carmine? I just want to make sure I understand what you mean by that. Deshead, I spent like 2 years straight world building back in 2012 to 2013. Never managed to write a story based on it. There you go, living proof. The Candace, I'm assuming replying your book's question. For books you've already published, better than continuing further on the story. Like the last editing, did you have to add more to the world? Oh, we're always adding more to the world. Always, 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 always. I don't think, because really if you think about that, it would be kind of strange if you weren't adding more to the world at any point in the story, because cultures, religion, magic, really any kind of skill helps build the world. Just seeing another person, seeing what they wear, seeing how they talk, their body language tells you everything about the world, like how they handle themselves in their day-to-day life. So I think somebody who really wants to tell an involving story and is really having a good time with it and really wants to put their best foot forward is going to constantly be world building up until the story's end.
So we'll talk about Carmine, your question a little bit too when we get to chapters, but each chapter should do one of three things. It should either build your character, move the plot, or build your world. There's no like one true best way of world building, but learning how to weave it into your narrative is a skill that you figure out just from lots of reading and lots of writing. So you can world build in dialogue. You can have someone say something that's very distinctive to that world that your reader may not understand yet, but then you go on to explain it to them, or they kind of figure it out through the dialogue. You can build it through exposition where he's maybe walking down an alleyway and you're describing what the buildings are made out of and like what people are doing and what the market looks like, and that's world building. There's way too many ways to world build to say like any one of them is distinctive and this is the one way you should be world building. Like you'll constantly be world building. And now that I think I understand Book's question a little bit more, so I'll use my first two books as an example, my Whispers books. Even when I finished it and I was having friends read it, like to beta read it for me, I had someone coming back like asking me very pertinent questions on why didn't this happen? Why didn't this character do this? Like, how does this work in your world? So the book was done in my eyes and I had done like 11 or 12 edits myself through it, but someone else caught that stuff. So I was still adding to the world, like even before it got published, and I thought I had written the end and I was done. So you were always going to be building on the world.
Yeah, and to kind of just add to that a little bit, and you can do it in so many different ways. Like she said, you know, you can do it through exposition and dialogue. The way I introduce archprophets, which are the highest body within the religions, and necromancer, how I introduce them is one of the brothers doesn't use the title, and the other character talking to him takes offense to that, and he's like, "You mean archprophet such and such," and that strikes a conversation, and that gives you an opportunity right there to kind of explain it a bit.
Okay, I think we got all of the questions.
I think we did. And if you guys have any more, please, you're not bothering us. Feel free to ask whatever you want.
Keep on asking. I will go to the next slide in the meantime for characters and dialogue. Haha, it's us. All right. So there are different points of view that you can take whenever you write. There's first person, which the narrative will say I, me, my, referring to myself. Second person, you, your, where the narrator is actually speaking to you. And then third person, she, he, his, hers, theirs. Different styles have different pros and cons. I rarely see second person. I see second person a lot of times in short stories, just because it can be one of those like exhausting point of views to read. One place that I've seen it done well on TV is You on Netflix, where he actually speaks in second person in his monologues, where he's not speaking to the viewer, he's actually like in his head speaking to the girls that he's stalking. Yes, it is very hard to write in. It is very hard to read because like your reader doesn't know what's up. The other place that I see it a lot is like Reader X character fan fictions, where they're writing it to be like you are with that character, so they refer to you. So I find it to be a really fun practice if you want to sit down and try and write something in second person. I did it once and it was super fun and it came out really well, but I don't recommend it for long form fiction. First person and third person have a lot of different pros and cons, and it's worth trying both to see which one you like better. We don't really recommend swapping between first and third. We do it in Catgirls because Matt is the only first person point of view character, and then everyone else is in third person. But I know even some people don't like that, so it's kind of up to you and what you're comfy doing.
I would like to add too, if you are leaning into first person versus third person and you're not sure which one to do, stick with third person. Third person's a lot easier to learn. It allows for a lot more flexibility and is the standard for most books. First person is really difficult to pull off because you're in that character's head constantly. This is that character's voice. So if you have multiple perspectives and they're all in first person, that can be exceptionally challenging to write because now you have to account for the different headspaces of those characters. So if you're not sure which one to go with third person. It's a much safer way to go. And then as far as present tense and past tense, he walks into the kitchen versus he walked into the kitchen. Once again, if you're not sure which one to do, past tense is the standard in the industry, and it is the one that most people are comfortable reading. So you'd say, oh, Matt strode past her into the dining hall, or Kiki dug her nails into the fish like a ravenous animal. That's using past tense, and it's usually a lot easier for people to read, so that's what we would normally recommend.
Third person past tense is like the most forgiving of all when you're writing a story, just because you don't have to worry so much about perfecting the character's voice and making sure that you are capturing every single part of them. And then the past tense, like, it is so easy to tense swap in present tense, and it takes so much editing. So I usually recommend just doing past tense. So when you're building your characters, the one thing that we recommend is starting off with giving the character a truth. So before you even think about like hair color, eye color, skin color, height, whatever, try and think of the one thing that drives them. So like Sahira is trying to find out why demons speak to her and how she can summon one if she can. That is her truth right now. Truths can change. They don't have to be permanent, but it should be whatever is driving your character to do what they are currently doing. And then when you have characters with truths that clash, that's when you get really cool dialogue, you get really nice scenes, there's a good conflict going on, and it'll help you stay on the path of like, who is my character versus these other characters.
And on that note, dialogue should feel natural. It's a back and forth between characters. Unless there's a very, very good reason for why it's happening, Monologues shouldn't typically occur. If the person is standing there going on and on a tangent for 3, 4, 5 minutes straight, somebody's going to interrupt the guy. It's rare that somebody is going to be able to talk for that length of time unless they're like a teacher or they're put in a position that allows for them to do that. So be really careful about that. And then dialogue between characters, like it says, it's a back and forth between them. So try to approach it with what is the character's intent or goal here, and both of those characters should have some sort of intent towards one another. Like in exchange with a merchant, for example. The person buying something, he wants to get a good price, but the merchant wants to try and charge as much as he can. And their conversation is going to reflect that a little bit. So they're going to barter with one another. They might joke. They might bring up each other's family and be like, oh yeah, I wanted to buy this for my daughter. Oh, well, I spare no expense on my daughter, and they're playing with each other. That's how dialogue should normally feel between characters.
As an absurd introvert with little conversational experience, what do you do to keep the dialogue and interaction unique to the characters without making them bleed into each other and being indistinguishable? Basically, the unique voice of the character without diving into absurd dialectic. You read a lot of books, Candace, I know, so if you actively read and kind of study how the characters talk to each other, that can be one way to study it. I like when I go to coffee shops, but again, I know this is against the absurd introvert. We will go out to coffee shops or conventions. I'll just listen to people talk and exchange ideas, and I like to watch their mannerisms and how they use their hands, or if they tip their head, or if they have nervous tics playing with hair or touching the backs of their necks. Those are the kinds of things that you'd be looking for in the books too. For really easy ways to distinguish different characters, one is getting rid of contractions. So if you have a noble character and one of high birth, one of the easiest ways to distinguish their dialogue is just to not use contractions ever. Do not instead of don't, did not instead of didn't. And that creates such a different feel to everybody else. Their vocabulary is a big one. So if they're using a larger vocabulary versus a smaller, shorter vocabulary, that could show difference in education. If you have a scientist character, the things that they could refer to could be more scientific or study based. Just the things that they focus on or choose to focus on when they talk. You don't have to worry about super hard accents or throwing in crazy. Oh my god, I hate Hagrid speak so much. Every time he spoke, I had to read it 20 times because I did not understand what this man was saying. So you don't
You're
have to
sitting
go
there
that
pushing the glasses up on your nose, really concentrating. Okay, I think what he meant by this phrase.
He's trying to communicate.
And can narratives have a truth? So yes, they can. So to me, what that would be is, does your story have a main message? Does it have a message it's trying to portray to the reader? And you can go with that, and every story is going to have those to some degree. But if that is the main purpose of the story, it's I want my reader to understand this point of view, or I want to try to convince them of this, then your characters and the world take more of a back seat, because at that point, the story is more about the message that you're trying to portray to the reader. You're trying to convince them of something, basically.
Hi, Pyro. Harry Potter. You're Wizard Harry with 18 fucking quotations. I hate it so much.
Oh my god, I remember. Actually, I just had this hilarious core memory that unlocked when I was watching the first movie on DVD and it had subtitles available, and I remember it was during the Quidditch match that I could never understand what Harry was saying. He's like, oh, he's got a rogue bludgeon at it, or something like that. He said something in British. And so I'm sitting there okay. And so I rewind back and I put on subtitles. I'm like, oh, that's what he's saying. Yeah, he's always been really hard for me to understand.
Yeah, that one, how it was written was so tough. And even You're a lizard, Harry. Even Brandon Sanderson has a couple of characters in his series that I have to go really slow and like say it out loud to see if I'm catching it. I am not a huge fan of going crazy dialectic beyond y'all or like shortening the G's to an apostrophe. Like, don't use a million apostrophes. Like, it's okay if you just want to say we going out, that's fine. But you can also just describe it at the end like he said with a southern drawl. Oh, okay, my reader suddenly understands. Or like a New York accent. Like, you can explain that to your reader without making it impossible to read. I wanted to add one more thing too before we go. So with the dialogue too, it's good to... Every storyteller has secrets, right? We are holding all of our secrets to us and we are going to show them off one at a time to our reader. So it's really important that you keep those secrets to yourself and you don't give them to every single one of your characters. Because what happens is if they're all answering each other's questions without ever asking, like, what does that mean? Or what am I going to do? Then it's like, oh, I guess they all know everything and the reader is just like a third wheel on this. It feels very assumptive. There will be times where I go back and even my own dialogue and I'm reading it and I'm like, how the fuck would she know that? Like, she has no idea. No, she needs to ask, like, what is this? What does that mean? We had one the other night with Snail Girls where Jack was like, so does everyone know who Eliza is? And I'm like, no. It's time to go fix it. And those are the kinds of things that it's okay for your characters to ask. I don't understand. Can you explain that? Like, what do you mean? Yes, unreliable narrators are absolutely a thing. Even if they think they are 100% right, it's okay for characters to say, no, it's not. You're not really following this.
All right. So then we got, oh, you got it.
Chapters.
Oh, this one looks really funky to me.
Got stuck. There we go. Now it's not stuck.
Okay. I'm gonna step away for just a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay, cool. Can you get me water? Yeah. Cool. We're at an hour anyway. I'm just gonna run an ad really quick. That way we can keep the pre-rolls off for anyone popping in. And for anyone else that's here, please feel free to ask questions, chat. All right. When writing to get better, do you do something similar to the story that you're working on, or is it better to do something completely different? Book, that depends on what you're trying to improve, honestly. So if you're just trying to overall improvement, I recommend reading a bunch of different genres and trying to write short stories in different voices. And that, again, it depends on, are you trying to improve your character writing? Are you trying to improve your world building? I personally like to pick one or two things to focus on at any given time to improve. So, for example, mine right now is improving more of my world building in smaller chunks. That's not necessarily exposition is one, and two, including little pieces of exposition that have more world building to them. The more I read epic fantasy, the more I'm like, I can slow down and really talk about these things and what they're made of and what they look like and how they're adding to the world. So depending on what you want to do is great. I've also, like, I learned a lot writing my second person present tense cyberpunk fic. I learned a lot writing Ophelia. I've learned a ton just writing everything. I think it's super helpful. See, and Sneaky, I've never written fan fiction outside of commissions. Like, I've always written my own personal stories. It feels better to me to like make something myself, set my own rules, and then do my own thing. So if it works for you and it helps you learn, great, write fanfic, but it's not like a necessary stepping stone. What's my favorite way to consume books? In my hand before I go to sleep. We like to read every single night, so I usually try and get like a chapter or two in before bed. I'm not a big audiobook person. I've listened to a total of 2.5 audiobooks, and one of them was cool because I could cross stitch at the same time. Thank you. And then the other one I did because I was at Farmers, and that's all. It was Ready Player One with Will Wheaton, and honestly, I don't think I would have gotten through the book if it weren't for the audiobook. So I'm glad I did. Yeah. Sneaky said a lot of people start writing by making fan fiction because all the world building already exists.
So I'd like to actually add my 2 cents on that. That's actually how I started a lot of my writing. I would definitely at least try it and see if it's something you like doing. I do agree with Sneaky to a certain point, because I have found that in my experience, whenever I did fan fiction, it would test my knowledge about that fiction. For example, and I'll be totally honest with you guys, so here's my tender side. I wrote a lot of Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and I even did some Digimon and My Little Pony fanfics. So I have written all of those, and some of them were for clients, and some of them were just personal work. And I found that it was really helpful in helping build ideas in my mind, because it would test my knowledge on the material that I'm writing. So I would see how things are working on it, and I would realize as I'm writing it, like, oh no, that's not how this goes. That's not how this character acts. They wouldn't approach the situation that way. That's not how a Pokeball works. So I liked it for that reason, because as I would test my knowledge in those subjects, I would come up with my own ideas, and that would make building my own worlds easier.
That's so funny to me. Like, I think I did. So I wrote some Ragnarok fanfiction, but that doesn't really count because that was just like putting our characters into like Ragnarok world. There's no real world there beyond like transcending and stuff.
That's fair.
And then Ion, I loved the lore of, so that was like a big fanfiction for me because the lore was so good. And then I wrote like a short story for Lychee and Arakune, and I think that was it. I think that's like my total fan fiction. I've written plenty for commissions, which it is. I do agree that it's a really good challenge to immerse myself in the world and its characters and make sure that I'm hitting the notes for them every time. And like Rye said, like making sure if their dialogue is that way, is that something the character wanted to say or something that I wanted to say? So I have to be really careful. So it is a good way to learn like how to immerse yourself into a world and how to take away. But I've also seen a lot of fan fiction where people just don't really bother. They just kind of name the character whatever it's named in a fan fiction and then just run with it, and it sounds nothing like them. So I don't recommend that for writing practice if you're just going to like, this is Ghoul and now he's going to say whatever I want him to say instead of things that Ghoul would say.
Yep. So on that note, why don't we take a 5-minute break? Get up and stretch.
I thought that was the ad break. I already did.
You didn't get up. You stayed there.
Yeah, I'm going through the whole thing. I did not start on the chapters part, no, but we're going through. I had you get me water. I'm good. We're going.
Okay. I got my stretch. Just wanted to make sure you had your chance too. So here I can't sit down in her books all day.
I can. All right, chapters. This is the #1 most common question that we get asked on stream and Discord everywhere. What is the proper chapter length? I see this probably come up every day. There is no such thing as a proper chapter length. There are chapters in officially published books that are 1 to 2 words long or 1 word long. It's just like, no, end. For something very like punctuated. It can be in effect like books. Once you get to the point of ebooks and paperbacks, it's like just as much of a visual medium as it is a like a literal medium. So it does have an effect when your chapters are very, very short. Like your reader will feel just as anxious as you do. And it depends on the series. So Catgirl's chapters, we've run anywhere between 1,500 words and 6,000 words, depending on what's happening. Sahara chapters tend to be really long, like 2,400 to 4,000 words each. Snail Girl's chapters are usually like 1,800 to 3,000 words. There's really no perfect answer to this.
And I will second that. I have read tons of books where a chapter is 500 words. How long the chapter is usually determined by what do you want to say in that chapter. What's the point of this chapter? What purpose does it serve? Sometimes a shorter, punchier chapter will serve a better purpose because you can instill fear, you can instill discomfort. You have all kinds of things you can do with the chapter length. You can take longer chapter lengths if there's going to be a long discussion or debate with two or more of the characters. There's no proper length. And moving on, each chapter should either build the world, forward the plot, or grow your character. Great chapters accomplish all three. I agree with this is one of my biggest things about it, is that a chapter should serve some sort of purpose. Whether somebody punched someone in the face and that traumatized him, and so he gets up and he's deciding that he doesn't want to get pushed around anymore, but the chapter ends right there. The chapter should serve some sort of purpose. So it informs the reader of how the world works. We can explain the religion a little bit. Maybe one of the other characters had an argument with their friend. It can even be little things, like little discussions. It doesn't have to be this big dramatic exchange every chapter.
Carmine asked, what's it like writing fan fiction of your IPs? It's amazing. It feels like coming home. I love it. I love when people commission fan fiction of our IPs, whether it's cat girls or otherwise. Like, I love it. I don't know. What about you, Ray?
It depends on how I'm feeling that day. So right out the gate, it's extremely flattering. I feel very warm when someone commissions me to write some sort of fan fiction within Cat Girls or any of the other worlds that we've designed. But it really does depend on the day, because I do need to put myself in a certain mindset. So it's kind of like sitting back down. Coming to Cat Girls is like coming home, though. So 99% of the time, I have a great time with it. If I don't, it's usually because I woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Oh, very, very honest. Is it important to have somewhat uniform length or variance? Doesn't matter. No, it's really not. It doesn't matter at all. Like I said, Cat Girls has ranged from 1,100 words to 6,000 words. Like, there have been chapters that come out that are shorter, a couple with curated, but it made sense. Like, it made sense to make it shorter, and every time I read through it, I'm like, if I add anything else, it's going to destroy it. Like, it'll just feel like it's dragging on, and I'm repeating myself at that juncture. So you just kind of feel like you get to the end, and that's it. That's something I enjoy about See here. Every chapter is sliding world building into it, not a data dump, just built in the conversations, reactions. Thank you, Sneaky. Thank you. Like I said, that's some of the stuff I'm really, really working on and want to improve on as a writer. So I'm glad that it's coming through. How do you decide specifically this insert place should end a chapter, especially if you're in a situation where it runs on? It depends on what you're running on to. So while you're writing, if you hit a point where you're like, I have 3,000 words here, and if I keep writing, it's going to be another 3,000 words, and that's kind of been like the average for your chapters, it's time to stop and put in a good ending and let it go into the next chapter, is my opinion.
I agree with that. There were actually quite a few chapters involving Raven or Emberlyn and Tristan that I had to stop around the 2,000 to 3,000 mark because it would have felt strange. It would have felt unnatural if I ended the chapter at a later point, like mid-conversation, for example. Just because I was trying to make sure my chapter fell under a certain word count. So typically, you're just going to kind of try to get a feel for it. For example, one chapter, I can't recall what it is, but I've run into this situation several times. I may have like 1,500 words written down, and I'm at a good stopping point, but I feel like the chapter is just a little too short for what I want to say. I may just decide, well, screw it. I'm just going to go the full 3,000 words instead, because if I stop it right here, it feels too short for what I want to say, essentially.
Kind of like we were talking about earlier with the story graph, and actually is the next point on here. there should be some kind of conflict that either is getting closer to be resolved or is getting resolved that chapter, and it doesn't have to be a big conflict. Like, she couldn't find her favorite earrings. Okay, so we're like looking for her earrings, and the chapter could end with her finding them, and maybe she had a conversation with someone that helped like build her character and establish what these earrings are important or why. Like, it doesn't, every chapter doesn't have to be like a big dramatic fight scene. To answer Draconic's question, if you only have one or two of those points, should you keep writing until you have all three, or is chapter final with all three? Each one just needs one. As long as you hit one of those things, build the world, forward the plot, grow your character, then you're awesome. A lot of times when people get iffy about when I talk about how there's sex scenes in Cat Girls, I try and make it a point that they're all very plot relevant. Like, every time one of those comes up, you're either learning something about the world, or one of the characters growing in some way, or it pushes the plot a little bit. Like, I make sure that they have at least one of those things. Not always do they have all three, but it's still important to me that it doesn't just feel like I wanted to throw that in there, that it feels like it was necessary for the characters, it was necessary for the world, and it's still giving you pieces of information about the story.
To add to that, to anybody who, if you haven't read Jurassic Park, I highly recommend it. The story is actually a good example of some of the questions that people have been asking. It has virtually no character development, and it doesn't really world build since it takes place on Earth, obviously. But it does have a message it wants to say, and it performs it very, very well. So each chapter basically just forwards the plot and explains basically the message of the book. And it's honestly a fantastic example of chapters that pretty much only accomplish one or two of these things every time.
Sneaky said, I will say if you're writing a web novel with, say, weekly postings, your readers may feel they are getting insufficient content with smaller chapters, but usually that's more a matter of length and more a matter of feeling like padding. I feel like web novels and web serials are really the one place where you should keep like a consistent minimum number. So if you're only posting once a week, don't make one of your chapters 2 words. Like, do not. That's really harsh on your readers, and that's not going to look good on you. If you're going to plan on doing that, have it like a bonus chapter in the middle of the week so people still get what they hope is coming. But for us, like, we minimum, it usually has to hit 1,500 words unless it's a really, really special case. And that's exactly for the reason that Sneaky is saying. So that way, when our web novel readers get to it, it's like, I waited 5 days for you to write 4 words? I don't fucking think so.
I agree wholeheartedly. Does a chapter have to stay in one place or time? Can it not go to the next day in the same chapter? Typically speaking, you don't want to do that. It feels very awkward, very stilted if you time skip too much, especially if it's a whole day. So as a general rule of thumb, I would not do that. But you absolutely do not have to stay in one place. You can absolutely move the plot a little bit. You can time skip a little bit. But as a general rule of thumb, try to stay within the same day.
That's what scene breaks are for. So like anytime you see the cute little cat ears in the book, like that's a scene break. If you see similar things in other books where they've got like even if it's like a little hyphen line like that, it'll be like, and they fell asleep the next morning, because like we don't need to sit there and watch them sleep for however long, it's fine. But the ones that I've run into with editing that are very problematic are when they skip like weeks worth of time, and especially if it's characters that are getting to know each other and you're trying to develop their relationship and you suddenly skip like 2 weeks. What happened? What happened during that 2 weeks? Why haven't they talked at all? Why are they still this awkward? Like 2 weeks is a long time. I had one that I read where it was like 2 weeks that they were traveling together and camping and building fires, and like what a great opportunity to develop your characters together, and they just time skipped it. So it's good when you have a focus that you're trying to develop these characters and develop your plot. Like, try not to skip integral moments like that. If it's just you are overseeing a kingdom and you want to talk about it 1 year and then skip 5 years because we're not focused in any, that's okay. Like that's different, I think. All right, so we talked about the conflict. don't be afraid to take your time with slower scenes. This is something that I will forever be working on. And I think as writers, we all go through this where our first stories, we want to get to the action because we are positive that our readers want to see the action. But the action doesn't feel as good unless you have the build up to it. So don't be afraid for the slice of life. Don't be afraid to have your characters sit down and have a conversation. Show things like whatever they do during their day. Take some time and explore other parts of your world and introduce that to your readers. Like all of this will add up to your super ultra climax.
I agree. These are actually some of my favorite scenes in books. If you read Brandon Sanderson, he uses a lot of these scenes, and these help characters grow. They help demonstrate the bonds between friends and family and lovers, and really, the slice of life moments are just as important as the climax, because you really think about it, if you don't have any moments like these, it's hard to feel attached to the characters because you don't see them conversing with one another as often. You don't see them bleeding their heart out. You don't see them really expressing what it is that makes them fight or what makes them struggle, because the author doesn't spend enough time letting the characters talk to one another and express to one another. But if you spend that time, when big moments come up, and the reader might feel a sense of anxiety because you know, maybe the author, for example, has a habit of not giving any of the characters plot armor, so sometimes characters get swapped out a lot. It can make the reader uneasy because they've grown attached to a certain character, so the stakes are higher. They feel more attached to the character, and when they triumph, it feels that much better.
I love slower scenes, but I feel like I'm dragging them out too long. So as long as your scenes are still developing the character, pushing the plot, or building the world, you're not dragging them out. If they're just sitting there like back and forth going nah, like for the whole page, then yeah, okay, maybe cut that back a little bit because we already got that. But as long as like 90% of your dialogue is doing one of those three things, then you're fine. Like, it's important to make sure your characters are still building themselves, pushing the plot, or world building around. How do you feel about chapters from the antagonist view when the story does not give that information to the protag? I have mixed opinions on this. So that depends on what you want to do for your reader and not necessarily what you want to do for your characters. Do you want your reader to see both sides of the equation, but like want to take that whole mystery aspect away? Sometimes not having scenes from another point of view is not a bad thing because it creates a lot of mystery and wonder, and it makes your main character have to work things out mentally and like get there. And then once you get there, you could do the big reveal. But if you want to do the antagonist scenes, I mean, now you're giving your reader both sides of the story, so it takes away a lot of the mystery.
I personally try to refrain from showing the antagonist's point of view too much for exactly those reasons. I feel it's a lot more powerful if you maintain the viewpoints of the protagonists, however many you may have. It gets the reader invested with their goals and ambitions. It paints a target on the antagonist's back, and it provides the author an opportunity to show them a different point of view if they ever find out that they were wrong or misguided about something.
Yeah, like Magni. We were really set on not giving Magni any chapters except one, and like that's all he got. So we wanted to keep him in the dark, and like everybody else around him, they could share their thoughts and their experiences, but we didn't want like our readers to just get to see all of the sides, because it wouldn't have been as good. Like, that climax would not have been as good if we had multiple Magni scenes, and now he gets them, which is funny.
Yeah, now he gets side quests, so you guys can find out more about him that way.
Oh, good. All right, we're gonna go on to the next one. So, this next one is free editing advice for anyone who's interested in free. These are the most common mistakes anytime I get editing jobs. So you can screenshot this thing or save it and keep it in mind and use it to check your work once you're done. But let's go through them. Okay.
So dialogue tags and punctuation. What is a dialogue tag versus an action? I am going to the concert, she said. That's the tag right there. So there's a point where she's saying something. That's a dialogue tag. And then I'm going to the concert. There's a period. And then she pulled her shirt over her head. That's the following action. Typically speaking, what is considered grammatically correct is if you're going to use a dialogue tag, you need to say, she said, he said. That is considered the dialogue tag. You would normally put a comma there and then move on from there.
Lowercase.
Yeah, and then lowercase she said. Yes. So comma, lowercase she said. I'm going to the concert, period, and then new sentence, she pulled her shirt over her head. That is an action. I'll use another example. Because you can combine the two as well. You can say, I'm going to the concert, she said, as she pulled her shirt over her head. So you can combine the two that way as well. You don't have to limit yourself to one or the other.
There's also bonus rounds where you can put dialogue tags between split sentences, and you can use hyphens, or em dashes rather, for actions. I just posted a really good article I'm going to share with you guys here. Let me copy paste it. This is a giant guide on dialogue and punctuating dialogue, and it is very, very, very good. So I recommend saving this because, oh god, I like that it screwed it up. I think if I just do this, it should work. Yep, alright. This is a better one. That's what she said. No, you don't want to do that. But yeah, this is probably the number one mistake I see is dialogue tags versus action. No problem, Candace, thank you. And this is something that you can edit as you go through, but just make sure if it's she said, she screamed, she cried, she sobbed, she whatever, like if it's a sound that is coming out of their mouths, make sure it's a comma and a lowercase, and if it's anything else, an action, a period, or an exclamation point and an uppercase. Passive voice versus active voice. This is different from past tense and present tense. Passive voice is when you have, like, it was a passive thing that happened. So the food was eaten by the cat, and then the cat ate the food. It is impossible to delete all of your passive voice, and I actually don't recommend deleting all of your passive voice, but when you can, it's good to swap it to active. It is more present. It keeps your reader more invested in the story because it doesn't make it sound like things are just happening in the before times, like they are currently happening and still happening. So when you can, use active, but like I said, passive is something like Grammarly yells at me for all of the time, but it doesn't make sense in the moment. So it's okay if you use was here, had been, like every so often, because that's how you have to describe it. Like that's what fits.
Good example of that is dialogue. People don't always speak actively. It is a huge bad habit of me to use passive voice. I've always used passive voice. I think that's just because of the way I talk to people. So I have actively, tried to put more active voice in my writing. But I will second exactly what she said. You shouldn't try to get rid of all of it because then it all starts to sound the same. And there are situations where passive voice is stronger than active voice depending on the scenario. So I wouldn't obsess over it, but as a general rule, try to keep like 80-90% of what you're saying in an active voice.
Agreed. Then the next one is paragraph breaks between speakers. So if it's a new speaker, it needs a new paragraph. This is really, really important in dialogue, especially if there's going back and forth. Also, if you only have 2 speakers, you don't have to say he said, she said, he said, she said, like every single time, especially if they are going back and forth. You can say it like once or twice just to let your reader know who is talking. And then as you break between and split between, they'll understand because there's a new break. That means it's the other person. New break, that's the other person, and so on and so forth. I just reread some of Three Musketeers and his very active voice, which is cool to see. Probably Alexander Dumas is one of my favorite authors. I just read the whole Count of Monte Cristo, like unabridged version, and I can't recommend that book enough. It has a lot of punctuation that is now considered outdated and grammatical things that are considered outdated, but the storytelling is so good. The voice is amazing, and I just like every single page was awesome. Three Musketeers is also sitting on my nightstand as I need to read this. So it's on my TBR, but yes, he uses a lot of active voice.
All right, and then tense swapping, going from past to present or vice versa. She walks into the room. Hi, she said. So you want to keep everything in one tense. Obviously, the exception is dialogue, but as far as the narration is concerned, one of the most common mistakes her and I see is tense swapping. It's very easy to bleed into one or the other. So just as rule of thumb, keep it in one tense.
Now, something that I also see with this one is a character's thoughts. My personal take on it is if you're doing like the italics and the character is thinking right then, whatever they're thinking, it should be in present tense versus your everything else is in past tense because they are thinking this right now, right at this moment. So it's important to keep that way. Sorry, were you saying something?
I was just going to agree. Yeah. So thoughts should be in the active voice and the active time. Usually those should be in present tense.
And this is why when we were saying earlier, like writing in present tense is really hard because it's very easy to swap like this. And I see this a lot. Like she walks into the room. Hi, she said. Like that's present tense and then that's past tense. And it's very, very easy to slip back into past tense because it's what we're most used to reading and speaking. Okay, the last one is comma splicing, or using a comma instead of a period, and then forgotten commas between 2 independent clauses. This is different than fragments. Like, sentence fragments can be very effective and used to your advantage as a writer. I recommend spacing them in for a little bit of rhythm jumble for your sentences. Don't use a lot of them. Like, it can get really, really ugly, but it's fun to pepper them in there. Comma splicing is when you have 2 completely different ideas and you joined them by a comma instead of a semicolon or a period and they met 2 ideas. And then forgotten commas between 2 independent clauses. Forgotten commas are honestly the reason that I still pay for Grammarly every year. I'm not going to lie. Like, I've gotten better at it, but it is so hard for me because I'm just like typing what I'm thinking and seeing, and then I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, that needed a comma. So those are a big, like, just go back and edit it once you're finished and use an editor if you can.
Everybody is guilty of comma splicing. Anybody who says they aren't is lying.
Forgetting them, yeah. Or both, like me.
Yeah, it happens.
So these are all things that I recommend checking for, really, when you're done writing. Like, they don't have to be done immediately. Try and incorporate the dialogues, tags, and then the paragraph breaks as you're writing, because it'll just make it easier later to edit and go through and edit. But once you're finished writing, you can go and check on all of these and see if you hit all of it. And that will make editing a lot cheaper. If you're hiring an editor, it'll make the editor's job a lot nicer. And then it'll make your copy edit go a lot smoother.
And as we always say, at the end of the day, your story is awesome. There is always an audience. Nobody can write it the way you do. Yours is entirely unique to you. There is no such thing as an idea that cannot work. And at the end of the day, we want to hear it.
Something that I talked about at UWU too that I'll talk about here is writing is really hard and publishing is harder. So like writing is the fun part. Please, please, please enjoy the writing. a million things can go wrong while you're publishing, and we've hit like 95% of those speed bumps, and so we understand when things happen that it sucks, and sometimes it's just out of your control. But don't let that stop you. Like, the ones that really get ahead and keep at this are the ones who get recognized. At this point, it is so important to remember that this is a craft. If you dedicate yourself to it, then people will recognize the art in it and feel the connections that you've poured into it. So it's very important to just love it as much as you possibly can. And then if ever you need somebody to scream to, we always have our streams. You are more than welcome to come hang in our Discord, let us know what's going on, and we will help as much as we can. So much naughty goal. Put it back on. You had it just off there. Oh, it's the dreaded QR code. That's good that it's pinned in the link now. Any more questions about anything at all?
Today's been a really good day for me. Thank you for asking, Carmine.
I think I'm slightly hungover, but I'm okay. Thank you. How would one join a writing group if they wanted to? So I was in a writing group pre-COVID. I don't know what the landscape looks like now. You can check. Facebook has groups, and they have like a lot of online groups, and then Meetup is another great option where a lot of people put up groups for writing, D&D, game nights, all kinds of stuff.
When you were a beginning writer, what question would you ask of yourself? What question would you ask of yourself now that you wish you had thought of? Oh, like what question would I ask myself?
Depends. Are we talking about like when I was writing books in kindergarten, or like when I was first sitting down really looking to publish? Hi, Elix! Okay, so kindergarten.
I gotta think about this.
Kindergarten, I would have just told her to keep writing, don't stop writing, just keep freaking writing. Right before, like when I started publishing, it's hard to say because it was just a completely different time. Like, publishing and writing has evolved so much from when I started. So when I started, it was right during like the 50 Shades boom. And so people were getting on Amazon and writing like as much erotica as they possibly could and releasing it as fast as they could, with like multiple novellas and shorter stories. And the whole goal was to just build like as big of a backlog in as short of time. And mine didn't do great. Like, I tried to follow that, and I think the most I made one month was like $30, which was honestly for starting out really good. But I don't know what I'd ask myself, because now things are so different with what's popular, and like web serial stuff is so good. I think, you know what? No, I figured it out. I wrote a fucking lit RPG for NaNoWriMo one year, and before I knew what lit RPG was, I just really wanted to put a system like Ragnarok into my story, and I had no idea that Royal Road existed, and it did, and I think I would have given it a shot. Like, had I known.
It's funny to think about. I think if I were to go back and tell myself something, I would have just told him, read more, write more. Because I took reading and writing way more seriously as I got older, but in my early teens, I didn't really read or write a whole bunch. I wrote, but it was mostly fan fiction. And I didn't read a whole ton because I just wasn't super interested in books without pictures, if I'm being honest. So I read comics and graphic novels mostly. But that's what I would say to my past self.
I think the other thing that I would let myself know is that criticism doesn't mean that your story is bad. Criticism is hard for literally every person ever to swallow. So if you get nasty feedback or like harsh feedback or feedback that you just feel like hurts, that it's understandable, but it's really, really important to be able to separate something that you can take actionable feedback on versus something that they're just being a jerk and there's nothing that you can do. And it's also important to be okay with if actionable feedback was delivered in a not nice way, that it hurts a little bit, but still be nice. Like always be kind and don't ever fight back. Like just thank you for reading. Thank you for your feedback. I will apply that right now. I appreciate you. Like that's all you have to say. So I know when I like first started writing and first started trying to publish, like any criticism I got back from my friends just felt like a knife through the heart, and it shouldn't be that way. So understand that most people, especially if they're your friends or family, are going to give you feedback because they love you and they want to see your story work. And honestly, just hearing, yeah, it was good, hurts way more than someone coming to me and be like, you know, I wish this character would have done X, Y, or Z.
Now that I think about it, I think that was a pretty big eye-opener for me in my past writing. I mean, part of that was likely due to the fact that the people that I gave the story over to weren't really big readers to begin with. But if you get feedback like, yeah, it was good, I liked it, and they have like no other input, that tells me that they either weren't paying attention or what I was writing just wasn't very interesting. So that hurts quite a bit. And I'll second what she said. Like, if the feedback is unnecessarily cruel or mean or is a personal attack against you, I usually disregard that kind of feedback because that's not actionable, and you can say the same thing in nicer words, essentially. But taking feedback is one of the hardest things, but you should always take it in stride. You should take it gracefully, thank them for the feedback, and try to just look at it as, you know, is this something I can change, or is this something that I intended, or did the reader not catch something that I hoped that they would?
100% agree. What? I'm scrolling up. What's your favorite type of character to write? Oh my god, that's so hard. Like, that's like picking my favorite child.
I will try and answer this first, and I'll give you a minute.
Right?
It depends. So it's highly dependent on where the character is in their growth, who they are as people. For example, I pretty much always enjoy writing Matt. Almost like anytime I jump into his shoes, I'm like, yeah, my boy. So Matt is really fun to play because he's got a good sense of gallows humor. So that's an easy one. But if you had a gun in my head and said, pick your favorite type, my favorite type would be the kind of character who has a lot going on in their past, but they put on a brave face in front of everyone. That's probably my favorite character to write overall.
So my favorite character to write in Cat Girls is Kailu. My favorite character to write in Snail Girls is Mia, and then Sahira is Sahira. What does your actual daily writing routine look like right now, from the moment you sit down until you stop? It's different for both of us. So when I wake up, the first thing I do is social media posting. I go on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and I'll do a post there. If it's on Mondays or Fridays, I go on Raven and I post a video there. And then I take care of posting chapters on Railroad or Reddit if it needs to happen. I say hello to Discord. I check artists and see if we've gotten any messages from artists that we're working with currently that I need to respond to. And then by that point, it's usually lunchtime, so we have lunch. And after lunch, I'll either start writing or get prepped for whatever stream we have that night, and then I will write until bedtime.
So I will give you my good day and my bad day. My good day, on a good day, after breakfast, I will read a little bit to get myself in the mood. I have found that reading shortly after I've woken up gets my brain juices going. It helps me become more eloquent. Gets better writing out on the page. I feel more positive. Like, oh, hey, I've done this before, or I haven't done that before. So it's inspiring. Then I will reach out to any clients that I'm waiting for details from. I may touch base with some of them, make sure that what I'm about to do for the day is okay in their eyes. I will check in with Discord while I'm doing that. Say hi to everybody. I might play a game for like 20-30 minutes just to kind of get some of the excess energy out of me. And then I sit down to write, because my best time during the day is to write. Is to write during the morning, or write shortly after I've gotten up, So I'll do that, and if everything goes as according to plan, I'll spend most of my day doing that, and I'll be off the computer by 11 p.m. That's typically how that goes. On a bad day, it's anyone's guess. I could wake up playing a game for an hour. I could check in with Discord. It may depend on what I'm getting back from clients that day. There might be a cat girl chapter due. And if I haven't had my coffee, it's hectic. So those are basically two variants.
What detail do you dread the most in writing? Okay, go ahead.
So I'll start. Describing still environments. I detest this, and I am not very good at it. And it is something I am trying to get better at. So what I mean by still environments is if a character walks into a room, and let's say it's a dining room, and I'm spending my time describing it. I am describing the tablecloth, I am describing the make of the table, the walls. It doesn't have wallpaper. Who's sitting in the room? How many chairs are there? Are there people by the front door? I dreaded this when I was describing many of the rooms in Emberlin's estate, as an example. Now, if it's an active environment, like a combat scene, oh, I'm ready. Yeah, I can describe everything with perfect lucidity. It's not a big deal. But describing a still environment is still my most hated thing.
So let's talk about that for just a second, because that's a really great point. This is something that a lot of people struggle with. It's something that I'm also trying to get better at, and in reading Mistborn right now, like I make an active effort to write down or tag what he's describing and how. A lot of people that we found that go use ChatGPT use it exactly for that moment where they can't describe the room, so they plug in like describe a priest's room to me or describe an office to me, and then they plug in whatever ChatGPT has. The problem with that is that your character isn't going to notice absolutely every single thing. So let's say Matt walked into Everlynn's estate. The last thing on his freaking mind is the tablecloth or like the make of the wood. Like he might notice that it's really fancy, and he might notice that there's fancy settings on there, and like why are there 3 forks and 2 spoons? And you have to take a second and go back to your character and see what they're noticing. Like a good example that I got to do was when Matt was on She Island, and then, or I'm sorry, Sun Island, and then we brought Tristan to Sun Island, and Tristan describes the buildings like by name because he recognizes the architecture and the style of building and the era that it was built from, because this boy reads as many books as he can, while Matt's like, yeah, I guess it's kind of a pagoda. I don't know, that's what it looks like. Like, you have to remember that not every voice is the same. So practicing that is how you get better at it. Like the more you practice writing in your character's voice and describing their surroundings, that's going to help your world building. That's going to help set the tone. That's going to help give your character more personality and like feel in their background. Like, for example, like Ceres has like carpentry experience. So we've mentioned when she knows how windows are made or like the style of table or the style of chairs, like everyone's going to pick up different things.
I agree. Chocobo asks, how do you know when a scene is doing its job versus when it needs to be cut? I try to slow down, but maybe describing how they sleep might not be a good chapter. There are a couple of answers to this. So One, with the chapter, I usually try to set a goal. Like, what's the main thing I want to do here? And then as far as separate scenes are concerned, when I'm tackling, like, let's say a character asks a question or something of importance comes up, I will touch on that. I will describe it a little bit, might make mention of like why it's coming up, why it's a problem, and then circle back around as to like, oh, this is why this topic came up. So you might spend a paragraph, you might spend 2 paragraphs on this. If you're still unsure, that's where feedback helps. So if somebody is willing to read it and give you their opinion, that's going to help you determine whether or not you did a good enough job in your eyes.
Also remember our 3 main points of, did it forward the plot, is it building the world, or did my character get anything out of this? If you can't answer any of those questions, it's like a really big scene, then it might be better if you cut it out. Like if it hasn't done anything for your story at all and it's just empty fluff, like that's probably a good sign. The other thing is you'll get a feel for when you write something and it potentially might hurt you in the future. So remember when we talked about chapter 9 of Sahira and Lilith and Sahira's conversation, the first 2 drafts, I was like, I'm not sure about this. And I showed Ryan, he's like, you need to get rid of this. This is way too convenient. And I'm like, damn it, I had a feeling, but I was hoping it would be okay. But like sitting there reading it, I have to ask myself and look at it seriously, like, how did they get this? How did they decide this? Who else? Is there a precedent for it? How is this going to work in the future? Like, it just created way too many questions at a way too broad of a scale for it to work. So I deleted it like 3 times and then finally came up with something that I was happy with, and it was completely different than what I had at the first place.
It is really funny. It's like Sahira just walks in, I have a problem. I have the solution, but I don't know what your problem is, but I have it.
Exactly. That's not good. That's too convenient. That's what I was saying earlier with your characters knowing your secrets, like way too assumptive. Why does she know? Why is it this? What a convenient place for her to be in, that this is exactly when it would work and exactly when it for it to hit. Like, that's not good writing. That's way too convenient. Like you said, there's a difference between feedback and negativity, which 100% agree. Yeah, you got to separate the 2. Lucas said, I feel that because all my family said it was good. So if I may share, Rye, about your first version of Drive. Can I share?
Yeah, you can share. Go for it. I have moved on. I've moved on. I've grown.
That's why I'm comfortable sharing it, and I love you. So Rye's very first round of Drive, he put into a book, and I was really proud of him. He published into a paperback. The formatting is really nice. The cover looks great. I got to help him with it, and he had his family read it, and all of his family said, yep, it's good. Like, no feedback whatsoever. So then I bought a copy, and I was reading through it, and I started checking off things like, why is this? Why is this? Like, how are we doing this in this world? This reminds me too much of a PSO. Like, did you just take this? Rye got so upset. Like, he got so mad. And I felt bad, but at the same time, again, when somebody takes your baby that you've been working on for so long and starts like giving you feedback, it feels like they're stabbing you in the chest over and over. So when someone is trying to give you legitimate feedback to help your story, try your damnedest to, if you're angry, go walk a little bit, like take a block, take some breaths, take a sip of water, and then reassess, like, okay, what did they say that really does help my story? Like, what do I need to put in here? Like, there have been, where I can attest, plenty of times where I get feedback and I'm upset, but I 100% know like it'll just make it better. So I just go like touch the birds for a second and then come back and I'm like, all right, I'll fix this.
Yeah, to be completely transparent, we still get upset at feedback sometimes too. It happens because you put your effort into it, you try to put your best foot forward, and then somebody still has a problem with it. One extra thing I will note as far as feedback is concerned too is it's a careful balance of trying to make sure that the right people are giving you the feedback you need to hear. I should have given it to her sooner. That's what I should have done. And given that like everybody in my family wasn't much of a reader, nobody in that family read books very often, and the fact that they all thought it was just good and had no further input, should have been clue enough to me that their input just, and I mean it in the nicest way possible, wasn't very valid and wasn't very helpful. Yeah, it wasn't very helpful because they don't read much. They don't know what good books versus bad books look like. You know, they're not in a position to really give me the feedback I need to hear. But she was. And so when, you know, after I've gotten all this positive reception, all this positive feedback, you know, it's an echo chamber essentially at that point. And I get all that information, put it together, bind the book, and then give it to her. And she has a problem with the first 2 pages. I'm like, I have just wasted all of my time, and I am a terrible writer. And why did I ever think I could do this? And all the negative thoughts come in, and you know, you'll start to, you might even like come back and be like, well, she doesn't know any better, or she just doesn't understand my writing style. But all of her feedback though was valuable, and just looping back around, it's important that whoever does give you the feedback, you make sure it's a person who is going to give you honest feedback that you need to hear.
I see everyone screaming Parchment, and look, Parchment guy made me mad because of how he wrote it. That was like the meanest way to say Parchment couldn't have been used this way. Like, how dare he? But it's fixed, damn it. So it did get fixed. Also, Star, checking on Discord is not a bad day. We just mean like sometimes we'll go into Discord and then we get caught in there for like hours because everyone is super fun to talk to. And we're just like, oh shit, my whole day has just been like chatting with people. So we check in every day.
You guys are distracting in the best of ways.
Like we love all of our friends and we want to say hi and check in on everyone, but like sometimes we get stuck. So yeah, that's why we try not to. What's one craft skill you wish you had worked on earlier in your career? I don't know, because I feel like ever since I started really seriously getting into writing, I have just been trying to hone that and hone myself and hone social media and finding clients and like making it my reality. And I don't know, because even if I said like, oh, I wish I did better social media is a completely different beast now than it was even 5 years ago. So like, even if I tried to hone it then, I would have had to learn the same things all over. You know what? I wish we would have started streaming the writing server sooner. That's it. I wish we would have started that like shortly after publishing.
I'm actually kind of with her. Yeah, because I'm not doing anything differently now than when I was first trying to get Drive off the ground. It's just that I've learned more of everything that I was doing before, and I've gotten better at all of it. I still did research. I still had the skills. I just needed to fine-tune them. I knew I was willing to learn how to format and put pictures together. There's really nothing I can think of that I would have changed.
Was there ever a moment when you almost quit writing? What kept you going? There was a moment that I quit writing. 2 years, one and a half years after I started taking commissions back in 2016 or 2015. Like, this was a while ago. So I opened commissions on DeviantArt and I made the mistake of saying I will write everything. I don't have a hard no list. And I didn't understand the internet very well at that point. So I started getting requests and I would fulfill them no problem. And then I got 2 in particular that made me really uncomfortable, but I had said like, I don't have a hard no to this, so it's fine. I'll write them. And I finished one, and then on the other one, they wanted like a continuation, and I was trying to like drive it down some of the intensity that they were asking for. And like, she was just like, nope, that's not what I want. That's not what I asked for. And I could not bring myself to write it. Like, it didn't matter how much wine I drank. It didn't matter how much I tried to take myself out of my head, but I refunded her and I apologized profusely. And I got the angriest letter back about how disappointed she was in me, like how shitty of a person and a writer I was for turning it down. How could I say that I would write anything and then like I had to stop doing it? And that just it killed me because I tried everything and I put my whole heart into trying to finish this girl's commission, but she just like was very, very staunch on, I'm not, nope, not happy, I hate you. So I quit and I stopped for 2 years, and I didn't write anything for 2 years, and that was like some of the weirdest time of my life because I had been writing for as long as I could remember. I just constantly was working on a story. And then after that 2 years happened, that's when like the 50 Shades boom hit, and my friend was like, hey, like you should try writing again. So I sat down and started writing Whispers, and I was like, yeah, let's see what happens. And I just fell in love with it, and I couldn't stop. So ever since then, like, I knew that there's no quitting this. I can't quit it. It's such an ingrained part of me that I can't leave it behind.
For me, there wasn't a point where I quit writing, but it's actually a follow-up to Drive. So after I received that feedback from her, I took it down. I took it down from everywhere. I was really ashamed of the writing at that point. I felt like all of the good feelings that I had built up to that point were lies, that somebody was just in on this one big joke, and it really hurt me. So I took everything down, and I told myself, okay, you're not good enough at the moment. You just need to get better. You just need to practice. I've always been a very pragmatic person, and I've always been totally okay with acknowledging when I don't have enough skills in some area. So I thought, okay, let's hold on to this. Let's put it in the trunk, and we'll come back to it when we have more skill. And so for a long time, I didn't write anything. I kept telling myself I would practice more and I would get better at it, but I kept moving from job to job. It was only once I started working at an insurance company that shall not be named with her that I started lightly writing again, because I had a desk job and there was lots of time in between phone calls. I worked at the call center where I could practice, and I got a lot more practice that way. I started writing again and I started enjoying it, and then her and I started dating, and it just kind of fell into that, and we ended up doing Cat Girls, and here we are. That's what ended up happening for me.
When building a magic system that is supposed to die, be killed off by people without magic, how would you make that believable? What, like the magic system is supposed to be killed off?
If you're referring to the magic system itself, a very easy way to do that is to kill off all the people who are capable of said magic. So, it's true. Yes. So it depends on how your magic system came into existence. For example, in Necromancer, the magic system came into existence because of a type of energy that bled into the world. It's a type of energy that continues to propagate itself. It keeps building and building and building. So there's basically no way to get rid of it. So as long as that energy exists, there will always be the possibility that someone can cast magic. There's no getting rid of the system. But if you had something, for example, like, only people of a certain bloodline can cast magic, well, that's very simple. You just kill everybody off. Anybody who can use that magic, they just get burned at the stake or some other method. So the details, how the system can be removed. Actually, we have an example of this. Star Wars with the Jedi. All the Jedi are killed. And so the people who can use the Force are extremely few at that point. That's another example I can think of. But long story short, it depends on how your system manifests itself, because you just think, okay, well, this is how it was built. How do I destroy it? And usually it's by the same method by how it was built.
You can also make the energy finite. So whatever they're pulling from, mana, pools, spirits, energy, whatever, it runs out eventually, and there's just drains.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It looks like Des had pretty much said something similar. Yeah, the magic fades away like Middle Earth. Like on Lord of the Rings, it eventually just goes away because it's a finite resource.
Do you recommend character sheets? I always want to fill it with any and all info about the character. That's why I don't recommend them, actually. That exact reason. Like, you get so stuck on every little question that it asks, and it's like, hey, I don't know this. Now I don't want to write them because I can't answer who their great-grandfather's mother was.
it's only a matter of time before you run into some sort of conflict. It's much better in our experience to just get some basic attributes down about the character, like their appearance, maybe whoever they're living with, what their town looks like, what their job is, basic questions. You don't need to know every single teeny tiny little detail about them, because what you'll do is you'll write yourself into a hole at some point. It's inevitable, because your plot is going to contradict something about your character, or one character is going to contradict another character. It just creates a really big mess. And it's for the same reason anybody's like, oh, what do you think about World Anvil or these other sites? Don't use them. They don't provide anything to you that a Word document cannot also provide. If you have a word processor, you can make the exact same thing that way. World Anvil and those other types of websites, those are useful if you're trying to build D&D campaigns. That's what they're good for. If you're trying to build a Pathfinder or D&D campaign, they're fantastic tools, because that's basically all nothing but world building. That's the entire thing. You don't have to worry about how the characters are going to grow, because your players are the characters. You don't have to worry about all these fine details. You're just worrying about, okay, what kind of trail am I going to send them on? And that's it.
I've got
what do you think?
My world doc for Sahira. Okay. This is everything on Sahira. This is my character sheet for Sahira. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. That's it. That's all. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. Like he said, I feel like World Anvil is just a death trap to stick you in outlining, character building, world building hell. So get the basics that you need down and just write and feel it out as you go. You don't need to know their favorite food or their favorite drink or what they did on Wednesday or what kind of clothes they wear. Also, characters can have multiple outfits. I know this is totally weird thanks to anime, manga, and video games, but please give them some outfits.
Oh my god, that was another big problem that I had to address in some of my older stories, especially my fan fictions. I'm sitting there like, God, they haven't showered in 4 days. I haven't said anything about them eating, and they're still wearing the same clothes. They have to stink like the devil. So yeah, it's totally fine to switch out their clothes. You should switch out their clothes. That's a normal human thing to do.
If they're not switching them out, maybe note how they're washing them. Because yeah, if they haven't washed their outfit multiple days, it's gonna get gross. Parchment. You'll need to accept the knife to the heart. It'll only help. Scalpels will hurt, but are tools of healing. Yep, it's the truth. Yeah, the commissions thing was awful. You have gained the madness effect upon immediately giving the internet free reign. I learned a valuable lesson to set boundaries immediately and standards and say no if I am uncomfortable. So I have a hard no list now, and I will not write on my hard no list. And then I am so glad to be off Fiverr, because I had one other nightmare customer on there, and she was actually the reason I quit Fiverr. She tried to throw extra work on me for free, and I said, no, we're done. And she went to the help desk, and they closed it out and refunded her my 2 weeks of work. And I was fully vetted in, fully pro, fully everything. And they were like, nope, you should have done better customer service. This was on you. All right, well, done with that website.
So scrolling down, Carmine asks, how do you best find ways to describe something you have not experienced or would be impossible to experience, such as weird magical effects or specific mental changes and breaks? Research. Research is going to bridge the gap between anything you have not experienced or are unsure to explain. And you can take abnormal things that you normally would not be able to experience, like magical effects, for example, and explain it in a way that may resemble something else. Like, for example, I've mentioned how there's an energy in necromancer that spreads around. There's at one point where I referred to it as almost seeing pollen in the air. It has this kind of fine dust every once in a while that you can catch if you're paying close enough attention. If you are invoking mana, you might feel a cool sensation through your veins. If you've ever had a saline solution, for example, it's very cold, You can actually feel it going through your veins and up your arm. I'll try to pull from things like that I've experienced. And again, like I said, research will bridge the gap between anything else.
Yeah, anything you haven't experienced, research, reading other people's experiences with it, reading books about it. With magical effects, you can get super creative. Maybe it like invokes a smell into the air anytime you like invoke your power. Maybe it has a specific sound. Maybe it's a sound that only you can hear. Maybe there's a visual effect, or it can be, like he said, cold ice in your veins. That's where your creativity gets to no bounds, and don't put filters on it. Like, I am so bad at hard blocking myself, like, oh, that's not real and not like close to reality. And there's times where I have to push that away. Like, why does it matter? It's a fantasy. I can do what I want. So do what you want.
This couldn't happen. Yeah, that's why they call it fantasy.
And characters never use the restroom. Look, I don't feel like it's important to ever mention characters using the restroom ever. We'll just always pretend that they have, you know, authority over their own faculties.
Using the restroom is one of those things that you don't have to explain, because everybody assumes, oh yeah, well obviously, you know, they're taking care of themselves while they're camping. I don't need to. That's like too much information. Like, I don't need to know every single tiny step in their day and make sure that it's addressed every single day.
Draconic said, I will admit one of my favorite writing exercises is to imagine what my character's favorite food would be or what their favorite music genre would be. And that's totally fine. Like, that's a lot of fun to do. We're just saying, like, don't worry about filling out a full character sheet before you dive into actually writing the character. This is stuff that you can always think about on idle time or think about just later, just for fun. But don't let it be the reason that you don't actually write them.
Yeah, I know she's done the same thing, and I'm guilty of it as well. I'll think of sometimes, oh, you know, this song is something I would picture this character listening to, or I feel like this song really captures what my character is about, or I could see them eating or drinking this. I think that's totally fine. Exactly like she said, we just want to make sure you don't get too caught up in the details.
Book, we did answer your question at great length. I didn't know you left, or we would have skipped over it and come back to it. Toopy said, I love how the slime face tracks right. So the slime is actually like a live 2D VTuber. He's his own little VTubing slime.
Yeah.
The funny
I'm a
book
menace to society.
Hygiene is a social construct. Yeah, that's another one, like brushing your teeth. Like, yeah, you can mention it, I guess, if it's important to that moment or around the time, or you can use it as a break in the conversation, like you just need your character to get the hell away. Like, I'm gonna go brush my teeth now. Sure, that's cool. But yeah, like having to bring up just daily needs of humans or mortals is not necessary. Happy ghoul pets. All right, 5 more minutes for any questions, and then we're gonna call it. Thank you guys so much for all of your questions. This has been awesome. The Critical Role Caleb, they're all dirt wizards who smell. I mean, that's fine. If you want to have characters that don't shower, mention that they're dirty and nasty and slimy.
If you read anything by Joe Abercrombie, none of his characters ever bathe, and he makes a point of mentioning just how badly they smell.
Yeah, like all of this stuff can be point of interest for your characters and your world and the storytelling. Yeah, intensely brushing his teeth or constantly brushing his teeth because he's afraid of plaque. How do you two get out of world building hell? I just build the world as I write in it. I'm not good at building worlds outside of writing, honestly.
So really quick, I don't fall into that at all anymore, because I know what my writing style looks like. I know that if I get too many details down, it's going to bog me down because I'm not adhering to the outline that I set forth. This actually happened, some of you may remember if you were here, when I was first brainstorming for Dynamis, which was Sundari Mecha. It was like the first week I had announced it, and everybody had so many cool ideas, and I was kind of jumping off of those pads and thinking, oh, you know what, that would make this make sense, that would make that make sense. And I started creating my own world doc, and I started explaining every little details, like to how the machines work, where these creatures come from, what the characters are like. And I sat down to write it, and I was like, I'm not having fun anymore. I don't want to write any of this. So I ended up scrapping the entire world doc and just starting over from scratch. And I just started letting the story guide me, because at that point I felt pressured to follow all the information in there, and then it paralyzed me because I didn't know where I wanted to start anymore or what I wanted to explain.
Yeah, I get really stuck in like world building if I'm outside of the world, because I want to be in my character's shoes as I'm feeling these things out, as I'm seeing them for the first time, as I'm introducing them into the story. And there will maybe aspects that I'm not 100% sure on. Like, I didn't figure out a school layout for Sahira until like last chapter. I'm like, oh, I should probably decide like where the buildings are, and that way I can explain the directions they're going. And then I took that and I went back to the previous chapters and I was able to add in for that. So as long as you know even just a little bit of where you're going or what you're doing, like explore it and then put it in a world doc as you figure things out, and like make little notes for yourself so that you can go back and add them more later.
I feel like I know half of my writing style. I know something is missing when I write, but I never know what. What do you suggest in finding what I'm missing? So for me personally, what helps is reading material that I might be interested in and seeing if there's something in there that evokes the same feeling of what I am trying to put into my work, and see if there's a certain way that they word it, see if there's a certain way the characters speak with one another, how something is described, or whether it's just the flow, the pacing of the story. And then I would try and, because there are plenty of stories that I really admire and whose pacing that I feel really fits my writing style. So sometimes I'll go back and I'll read something that I really liked, and that helps me nail down more what I want to say in my work. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%.
Okay, well, I am just about ready to wrap up, and I know I'm feeling pretty hungry, and if I am, I know you are too.
Yes. Okay, so thank you guys very much for coming. One last time, we have really cool Black Friday sales going on in our shop, and we always can answer more questions in Discord. If you're in Discord in the writing group, feel free to ask in writing general if one of us are around, and we will try and give you a quick response. We very, very, very much appreciate you taking the time to come be here. So thank you for being part of the awesome community. Ignore the booth number because Lynx forgot to remove it before the panel. We are gonna go raid a new friendo. He's trying to find us a new friend. So EJ Sean sounds fun. He's been on here for 2 years.
Woo! Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. We love having you all here. We always have so much fun talking with all of you. You guys please take care of yourselves, and like she said, feel free to message us, feel free to ask questions in writing general. We do try to answer questions if we're able to. But yeah, that's about it. Please take care of yourselves, all right?
Also, if you have any requests for future panels, workshops, like anything you'd like to know we want one on religion for sure. But if you have things that you're like, oh my God, I need help with this, please like do a workshop on it. Feel free to suggest it in writing general and we will get it on our list so that we can help you out. But yeah, please have a good night, enjoy yourselves, and then let's go make a new friend. Panel on reading my spicy content is not happening. I love you. Goodbye.